Second reading continues in the second chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, verses 16 through 22. Herod became furious when he realized that the Magi had outwitted him. He gave orders to kill all male children that were 2 years old and younger living in and around Bethlehem. The age of the children was based on the date Herod had learned from the astrologers. Then what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, sobbing and lamenting loudly. It was Rachel, weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled, for they were no more. After Herod's death, the angel of God appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt with the command, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and set out for the land of Israel. Those who had designs on the life of the child are dead." Joseph got up, awakened Jesus and Mary, and they returned to the land of Israel. Joseph heard, however, that Archelaus had succeeded Herod as the ruler of Judea, and Joseph was afraid to go back there. Instead, because of a warning received by Joseph in a dream, the family went to the region of the Galilee.
Herod was anxious. All Jerusalem caught his anxiety. That's how occupied people survive. You learn to read the ruler's fear, to mirror it, to brace for what comes next. And then the children died. Anxiety becomes deception. Herod calls the Magi secretly, pretends he wants to worship the child. When they refuse to cooperate, when they disappear into the night, Herod's humiliation erupts into rage. But even in rage, he's methodical. He calculates the timeline, orders the killing of all boys 2 years and younger. He goes beyond what's necessary to ensure the target is eliminated. This is bureaucratic violence, the methodical destruction of innocence to protect illegitimate power. The story isn't about one uniquely evil man. It's a pattern, a system, the way that power protects itself when it feels threatened. Think about Herod's position. He rules as Rome's puppet, and everyone knows it. His legitimacy is always in question. He's already killed members of his own family when he suspects plots. Every challenge feels existential because his throne depends on violence, not consent. So when Persian astrologers, the Magi, show up asking about a newborn king, Herod's anxiety makes sense. It's paranoia of someone who knows exactly how precarious power built on violence always is. The baby must die, and not just that baby. Every baby that might be that baby. The systemic erasure of possibility, because Herod cannot risk being wrong. When power feels threatened, it destroys. The calculation is always the same. Only the names and the borders change. UNICEF reported over 2 years, 64,000 children have been killed or maimed in Gaza. Another 223 in the West Bank. A 7-year-old boy named Atamai drowned in a flood displacement camp because shelter supplies were blocked. Iran and Pakistan have expelled 2.6 million people to Afghanistan this year, most of them women and children. In Sudan's Darfur, children are starving at rates never before documented. When the powerful get scared, the vulnerable pay the price. Now, Herod's sons learned their father's lessons well. The dynasty perpetuated itself, violence protecting power, generation after generation, always finding new threats to eliminate. We still live with this. Power that knows it's illegitimate, always acts the same. Sometimes it wears crowns, sometimes it wears suits, sometimes it signs legislation, sometimes it gives orders from command centers, sometimes it builds walls, sometimes it blocks aid convoys. Not every use of power is corrupt, but power always faces the temptation to protect itself through violence when it feels its grip slipping. But watch what the Magi do. They aren't anxious. They're curious, reverent, willing to be changed. When Herod tries to weaponize their wonder, when he attempts to turn their seeking into surveillance, they refuse. The powerful are right to be afraid, though, not because God orchestrates fear, but because a baby born in an occupied territory is a threat to every system built on violence. Vulnerability exposes brutality. Refugees challenges artificial borders. Outsiders speaking languages empire doesn't bother to learn reveal how narrow empire's vision is. When the fullness of time came, the story didn't unfold in Rome or Athens. It happened in occupied Bethlehem. Jesus and his family had to flee in the middle of the night, becoming refugees. The child that Herod tried to kill grew up to challenge every Herod that came after. The vulnerable one became the cornerstone. The refugee returned. The occupied territory becomes holy ground. This baby, who terrified a king, still terrifies every power structure built on violence against the innocent. Because God's choice of margins over the center, of the vulnerable over the violent, of love over fear, keeps exposing illegitimate power for exactly what it is. So we still have the same choice the Magi faced. We can cooperate with power's anxiety, protecting systems that destroy to survive, or we can follow the path that leads toward vulnerability, toward God who shows up in occupied territories and refugee camps. We can show up and insist on life even when death seems to win. Love leads us forward. Not because love is naive. Love has seen what violence does. Love knows exactly how predictable the pattern is. But love also knows something violence can never grasp. The way of violence always collapses under its own weight. But the way of vulnerable love, the way that welcomes strangers and refuses to cooperate with death, that knows opening paths we didn't know existed. We become what Herod feared most, a community that won't cooperate with violence, that keeps choosing the vulnerable over the violent, community that insist on life.